Hello and welcome to Ask Jessie Nealand. I'm Jessie, and the question that I have today is a little more complex than most of the questions that I usually read. So she writes, how does one regain their internal strength and power after experiencing betrayal in a relationship? I'm not sure if you're in the betrayal as a deal breaker camp, but if you're not, I'll give you the lowdown as to why I'm asking this question. I got burned about 3 years ago, fairly early on in my relationship with my boyfriend. He crossed some boundaries that I'd laid down, and it shook me quite a bit, and we spent the following year and a half trying to rebuild. It wasn't cheating as it's typically defined, but suffice it to say, it felt like it to me. Fast forward to now, and I still do not feel fully in my power. Our relationship has never been a bad one. We fight on occasion, but we're never ugly to one another. There's a lot of love there, but the trust is still unstable. I still struggle with things, mostly things like if we're watching a TV show or film where there's excessive nudity or very explicit sex scenes, especially if it's in the context of infidelity. I should also add that our sex life used to be super experimental and intense and lovely. There was a lot of joy there, but after everything that happened, it died out very quickly, and it actually made my insecurities worse that things weren't as playful anymore. There have been other issues as well, though. I lost both my grandparents over the last 2 years. I lost my job. My boyfriend also left his job because he became too stressful and he's still unemployed. So our relationship now looks entirely different than it used to. It used to be this source of power and inspiration, but now we are broken versions of ourselves, and our sex life is a mere shell of what it used to be. While things have improved in terms of healing, there are still setbacks. I'm wondering how to get the confidence back that I once had, and can I do so when my partner isn't really feeling themselves right now? His own sense of self seems closely tied to work and feeling useful, so his libido just isn't what it used to be. So I typically choose questions that are a little more straightforward and shorter just because I try to keep my videos under 10 minutes. But this one feels important and resonant also because I think a lot of us can relate to this idea that you're trying to get your groove back while you're in a relationship that makes that difficult. You start to wonder, like, is the relationship the problem, or am I the problem? Do I need to fix me to fix the relationship, or fix the relationship to fix me? And it's very complicated because the relationships are intimate relationships, so intimately fuel your life. It supports or draws from your life force in a really powerful way. So to this I would say, I don't know if you can get your groove back and your confidence inside of this relationship or not. You're the only person who can know that. And if you don't know yet, then I would start looking and examining what it feels like to you, where your body is telling you yes and no. I have my clients do a yes and no exercise all the time to feel the difference between what feels good and expansive for you and what feels like it shuts you down. Now, that having been said, that's just listening to your gut, listening to your body, and using that information. However, a lot of times things will shut you down, not because the thing itself is bad, but because there are layers of stuff on top. And in any long-term relationship, there's always going to be layers of stuff that you have to deal with. The problem is that in your relationship, it sounds like those layers have been not dealt with. They've maybe been dealt with in some ways, but that there's still layers and layers and layers of instability, of resentment maybe, of just pain or anxiety about why that happened and will it happen again. And so the first thing I would say is it sounds like you need some radical honesty in your relationship, the kind of brutal, soul-bearing honesty that can rebuild intimacy and rebuild trust and rebuild a true closeness. And if you present that to your partner, like I have the need to talk about some stuff and be really, really honest with you about my experience of this relationship. And he's like, honestly, I'm not into that. I don't feel like doing that work. Then you probably get your answer pretty quickly and you can save some time as to whether or not you can get your groove back in this relationship or not. Because if he's not interested in having that kind of intimate, honest discussion to regain true intimacy and closeness with you, you're going to be stuck in a relationship that is not fueling you and will actually be detracting from that bold, confident person that you were. So the only way that you can actually find out what he's thinking and doing and where he's at with all this is to present it to him like, I have some big needs right now. I have some big desires. I really miss this person that I was, and I miss who you were, and I'm like working towards something, and I want your support. And Our sex life used to fuel me, and I think stuff has gotten in the way. Let's talk about that. So there's so many different components to what it would look like to be radically honest in your relationship and start rebuilding intimacy. But the only way you can do it is to do it. No amount of signaling or, metaphorical sort of sidestepping, like, how come we, oh, we never really have sex that often? And he's like, yeah, I guess that's true. You're like, I was really hoping you would tell me why. Like, you have to sit down and be willing to be vulnerable and say, I'm worried about this. I'm concerned. And it hurts me when this happens. And I want to work through it with you. Do you want to work through it with me? And then see where he's at with that. In my understanding of relationships, everybody's always trying to protect themselves a little bit. We close our hearts a little bit every time that we get scared. And the only way that a long-term relationship can thrive is if you're willing to over and over and over again sit and ungunk those layers with each other to get to the real, truthful, authentic part of what you want your relationship to be. Because in the beginning of any relationship, there's no gunk on top. You're like a clean slate. So you don't feel the need to close your heart, but then things hurt, Someone loses a job and they lose their confidence, and then you feel rejected, but you don't say anything, and then these layers, they gunk it all up. And in that kind of situation, I don't think you can get your groove back. I don't think you can return to that fully bold, confident, open-hearted person, because the person you spend all your time with is not allowing that. They're not holding space for that, and they're not fueling that. So if you're going to be in this relationship, you must work to peel away those layers with your partner and for yourself, of course. And he has to do the work for himself. He has to want to do the work for himself to figure out, yeah, like I did used to have a high sex drive. I wonder what's going on there for me. It makes me feel worthless that I'm not at work, and that's scary. And I think maybe I'm not useful to you. Like, if he's willing to go to those places and do that work, you guys can ungunk together. But if he's like, yeah, you should do that, but I'm just gonna not, there's very, very little you can do. And ultimately, most situations, most outcomes like that would probably be you settling. So if it's important to you to get back to this place that it sounds like it is, that place of open-heartedness and freedom and authenticity and energizedness and high libido, you're going to have to go into this relationship with the goal of rebuilding intimacy and talking about every little thing, everything that got you from there to here and gunked it up. You're going to have to go in and probably talk about all of it, or at least the ones that are the big important ones. Like, I still don't know how to trust you. And if he's like, well, that's your problem, hey, maybe it's your problem, but maybe you're going to have to solve that problem outside of the relationship. And if he says, wow, I had no idea you felt that way, let's really talk about it so so we can clear the air. This is why that happened, and here's why it'll never happen again. Maybe that's all you need. So the only way you can find out what the next steps are going to be is to bring radical honesty into the relationship. And another note is that libido follows the intimacy. For most of us, libido follows safety, that feeling of trust, and like, I am okay to be me in this relationship. I'm okay to be full. I am accepted exactly as I am. That fuels libido for men and women. And when there's stuff, there's resistance, or you're like, I don't know, I feel like they rejected me, and now I'm going to reject them. When there's that stuff in the way, libido drops. It's like, and a lot of men aren't aware of this connection at all, so he might deny it, but I happen to believe that it's true for men as much as it is for women, that when they feel really close to you and safe, that's also when they want to have the most sex, and that playfulness can re-enter the bedroom because it's a safe space instead of like, an exit strategy for energy, like, oh, I just have to regulate my energy and I want to have sex and now it's over. No, it can serve this thing, this playful, beautiful, lovely thing that you described, but only if two people feel fully safe being themselves with each other and they feel supported and seen and they don't have all this gunk in the way. So, be aware that probably libido will follow whatever other work you do, and I highly recommend trying to rebuild intimacy on a personal and emotional and, I guess, mental level a little bit, or a soul level, if that's how you want to call it, but it's the level between the two of you. It's the thing that makes you feel close and seen and safe and loved and accepted as people with each other, that when you work on that first, libido will follow. If you try to work on libido first, it's probably going to be really frustrating. I've tried it. It never worked out well because you're always treating the symptom and not the cause. So if the cause of a fallen down libido is like, you know, has to do with your self-worth, your worth as a couple, resistance to feeling like someone, you know, doesn't trust you. If it has to do with that, then like no amount of going to a sex store and buying fun little sex toys to like spark up, you know, the passion is going to work. It's all going to just, it'll be useless. However, if you work on the intimacy first and you're rebuilding it, then naturally you're going to start to rediscover what feels great, what feels playful. It'll start pouring over into the bedroom as well. I hope that is helpful. Please let me know if you have any comments. You can leave them in the comments if you have questions, and you can always submit questions for my Ask Jessie series at my website, www.jessieneilan.com/contact/.